Ben poured the exquisitely toxic box jellyfish into the bathtub brimming with ice cubes. After 7 seconds, the tentacles of the jellyfish pierced his arm, and in an instant, the venom spread throughout his entire body. The excruciating and agonizing pain, reminiscent of a piercing dagger, made him yearn for a release from life. Soon Ben died in pain. However, all of these events unfolded according to his meticulously devised plan. Within a few minutes, the prearranged ambulance arrived promptly. By the time he was on the operating table, he had lost his vital signs. Yet, his organs remained viable, allowing for an immediate procedure. Yes, Ben killed himself to donate his organs. Furthermore, all the recipients had been carefully scrutinized beforehand. For example, this blind man, who was a meat company customer service. To assess his character, Ben made a call and intentionally lodged a complaint, employing the utmost venomous language and discourtesy. However, regardless of Ben's lack of manners or his employment of the most malicious words to wound him, the blind man never grew angry. Instead, he merely responded with a resigned smile before finally hanging up the phone. And Ben covered his mouth in chagrin. Consequently, he proceeded to track and observe the blind man in reality. He discovered that the blind man possessed an ardent love for life. Despite his loss of vision, he played the piano with great skill and exhibited remarkable warmth and kindness. Ben trailed him throughout an entire day. At twilight, they arrived at a cafe where the blind man timidly exchanged greetings with the waitress. It was evident that the blind man held a romantic interest in her. After observing for an extended period, Ben couldn't resist approaching the blind man and inquiring why he didn't ask her out. The blind man felt somewhat bashful, as he didn't wish to intrude upon others or burden them. Ben found his answer, and the chosen candidate for corneal transplantation was now determined. The next step involved the kidneys, for which Ben selected a physical education instructor. This elderly gentleman relied on regular blood dialysis to sustain his own life. The old man found it puzzling, questioning why it was him.
Because you are a good man.
No, really.
Even when you don't know that people are watching you.
Unbeknownst to him, Ben had secretly observed him on numerous occasions. He noticed that the old man often mentored financially disadvantaged and academically challenged students. Despite his own severe illness, he consistently exhibited remarkable patience and tirelessly sought funding to support students in their pursuit of education. Soon Ben had surgery and was in the hospital. He beheld a young boy afflicted with leukemia, his hair completely vanished. Feeble yet brimming with hope, a hidden empathy stirred within Ben. Following a period of matching, he graciously donated his own hematopoietic stem cells. The piercing pain compelled him to unleash a subdued roar. Post-surgery, even walking became a hobbling affair. At this point, you must be eager to inquire why Ben embarked on this path. Several years prior, while driving home with his wife, Ben just looked down at the phone, and suddenly a bright light came. Ben swiftly maneuvered the steering wheel, evading the oncoming car, but collided with the minibus behind. Both vehicles tumbled violently, and all 6 passengers on the minibus perished. By the time Ben located his wife, she had already departed, devoid of breath. Ben was not held accountable after the incident. Yet, burdened with the guilt of 7 lives lost, he found life unbearable. Refusing to live a life devoid of his beloved, he resolved to atone by donating all his organs. Upon recovery, Ben once again enlisted the aid of a physician friend to locate a woman afflicted with a rare heart condition. She desperately required a heart transplant. In order to gain further insight into her, Ben assumed the guise of a tax official and approached her. After a brief encounter, Ben left behind a business card and departed, intending to maintain a distance for convenient clandestine observation. However, to his surprise, Ben received a call from the woman that very night, as her condition had deteriorated. Fearful of impending death, she sought someone to converse with, and Ben gently coaxed her into slumber. Simultaneously, he hurried to her side. Upon Ben's arrival, the woman had already drifted into deep sleep. Kind-hearted Ben remained by her bedside throughout the night. The following day, the doctors informed them that her heart was in a state of imminent failure, leaving her with less than a month and a half to live. Witnessing the woman's lack of care, Ben compassionately tended to her needs. He served as her driver, her gardener, and even accompanied her on dog walks. During this process, the two individuals gradually deepened their understanding of one another. The woman grew increasingly reliant on Ben and began confiding in him. She possessed a fervent love for life, yearning for a future of recovery, yet perpetually shrouded in the shadow of death. As he listened to her stories, Ben couldn't resist caressing her hair, wanting to give her more comfort. On that day, as Ben escorted the woman back home, she couldn't resist leaning in for a kiss. Externally, Ben remained unaffected, but internally, he was stirred. Yet, on this very day, agonizing memories suddenly surged within him. Once again, he recalled his own transgressions. Consequently, he set aside his emotions and commenced handling his possessions. He sought out a woman who had long endured domestic abuse, handing her a letter and leaving the car in her possession as well. The man commanded the woman to flee northward, but little did she know, a luxurious seaside villa awaited her. As she opened Ben's letter, he had already signed the transfer agreement. This presented her with an opportunity for a fresh start, and this weathered mother finally found a safe haven. During this period, Ben intentionally distanced himself from the woman. Yet the phone continued to ring, ultimately softening his resolve. Ben came to the woman's house and found her dressed up and prepared a candlelit dinner. Ben could not refuse to sit down, for it had been several years since the accident and he hadn't enjoyed a decent meal, let alone experienced such hearty laughter. The woman's tenderness broke through his guarded heart and altered his plans. Ben wanted to surprise her. The woman opened a long-damaged antique device and, to her astonishment, it began functioning successfully. Unbeknownst to her, Ben had secretly slipped in and painstakingly steadied it to bring her joy. From the late hours of the night until the break of dawn, he diligently repaired it. The woman couldn't believe her eyes as she tightly embraced the man, tears streaming down her face. Now, their emotions could no longer be contained. However, after they privately pledged their lives to one another, Ben quietly departed. Having fallen in love with her, in that moment, he yearned to live on, to spend the rest of his life with the woman, marry, and have children. Thus, he rushed into the hospital and found the woman's attending physician. Upon learning of her mere 3% chance of recovery, Ben's beautiful dream shattered. If he didn't donate his own heart, the woman would undoubtedly perish. Moments later, he resolved to make a farewell call to his doctor friend.
It's time. I love you.
Back in his room, Ben calls the blind man and apologizes for his rudeness. He then dialed the ambulance's number. The plan began its countdown. Sitting in a bathtub filled with ice, his mind turned to the woman. In the past, he wanted to die as an act of redemption. Now, he would sacrifice himself for love. To have been briefly loved by her was sufficient. Ben no longer hesitated and poured the venomous jellyfish into the bathtub. Tentacles entwined around his arms, and the deadly toxin immediately spread throughout his body. The excruciating burn pierced his heart, causing him to convulse and scream aloud. Even the shower curtain in his hand tore forcefully. When the woman received news of the heart transplant, she was excited to tell Ben, only to discover that he was no longer by her side. Soon, the woman lay on the operating table, and the transplant surgery was remarkably successful. Ben's heart began to beat in her chest. Later, Ben's younger brother discovered his plan on the wall. Indeed, Ben had never forgotten his transgressions. His brother found the woman and revealed the truth to her. His brother informed her that Ben had donated half of his lungs to him, as he had lung cancer, and half of his liver to an elderly woman, and so on. In total, he had saved 7 people in an attempt to repay the 7 lives he had taken. Upon hearing her brother's words, the woman burst into tears of anguish. In the final scene, the woman attended a music festival, where she was deeply drawn to a piano teacher. After his performance, the woman approached him and greeted him. The teacher noticed the scar on her chest and instantly understood her identity.
Are you a parent? Have we met? You okay? You must be Emily.
In that moment, the woman could no longer contain her emotions, tears flowing incessantly, because through the teacher's eyes, she saw the beautiful gaze of Ben.